Well, that way I know people are joining. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Well, we can start now. It's a couple of minutes after, so. When you're ready, Dave, give me the I sign. Okay, just like the NFL, right? Okay, good. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this meeting. My name is Tony Palumbo. I'm the Anoka County Attorney, and also I'm Chair of the Joint Law Enforcement Council. I am present in the Anoka County Boardroom, which is the site of the meeting today. A few ground rules, since this is the first time we're doing this virtually, and we have probably in excess of 30 people on this WebEx. So just a few ground rules. One, please mute your mics and your video unless you are speaking. That will save bandwidth and keep this meeting going. If you wish to speak, turn on your video and I will call on you, or your audio and video, so that I can call on you. And please say your name when speaking, as this meeting is being recorded for minutes. I have anticipated that there will be 4 motions brought during this meeting. You will see a poll on the right side of your screen for each motion. There is a voting option. You can click approve or object, and you'll have 30 seconds to vote. You will not see the results on your individual screens, but I will, so I will announce the results of the voting, okay? As a reminder, council, Joint Law Enforcement Council members only can vote at this particular meeting. And if another motion is made, the open meeting law requires a roll call vote. So I will have to go through on a roll call vote in order to keep it within the law. There is a provision to stream this matter on YouTube that was posted in the notice for this meeting. However, there is about a 30-second delay in the streaming process. So you won't be exactly up to the minute, okay? So those are kind of the ground rules. Does anybody have any questions about that before I begin? All right, so please, again, if you can mute your audio and your video so we can conserve on bandwidth.
Tony, Mayor Feldman, St. Francis.
Yes.
Can you explain that the voting thing? I'm not seeing that on my screen as far as when you vote.
Okay, you will see is it on the screen now, Dave? Okay, what'll happen is when the motion is being made, for example, the first one will be the approval of the minutes. It will come up on your screen and they will say approval of minutes for the January 22nd, 2020 Joint Law Enforcement Council meeting. Under that are 2 boxes, A, approve, B, object. So with your mouse, you can click on one of those.
Okay, and it will come up until you're ready to make the vote.
That's correct. It will not come up till I'm ready for the vote.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you. We will proceed. Usually we have a sign-in sheet at these meetings, so I don't have to take attendance, but unfortunately I don't have those, so I'm going to have to go through a roll call. So at this point, I'm just going to go right through, and because it is being recorded, Doreen has to take minutes. We got to make sure who has attended this meeting. So I'm going to proceed through the roll. Please just answer here or yes. John Swenson, Lino Lakes.
Here.
Okay. James Stewart, Sheriff.
Here, sir.
Doug Ebeltoft, Spring Lake Park.
Here, sir.
Brad Wise, Coon Rapids. Was that you, Brad?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay, we know you're here. Patrick Antonin from the city of Circle Pines.
I'm here.
Lenny Austin, Columbia Heights. Okay. Julie Brasted, Anoka County Commissioner.
Here.
Okay. Tony Caving, Lino Lakes Council.
Here.
Okay. James Cone, Circle Pines Lex. All right. Dan Deno, Oak Grove Mayor. All right. Steve Feldman, St.
Here.
Francis Mayor.
Here.
Jeff Caters, Ramsey.
Here.
Okay. Jeff Menth, Ramsey.
Jeff Manth here.
Thank you. Robert Nelson, Spring Lake Park. Okay. Dave Oswald, Fridley.
Here.
Okay. Eric Peterson, Anoka.
Here.
Brian Padani, Blaine.
Here, and Mayor Ryan will not be joining us.
Okay, thank you. Donna Schmidt, Columbia Heights. All right. Scott Schulte, Anoka County.
Here.
Todd Schweiger, St. Francis.
Here.
Okay, Julie Trude, Andover.
Here.
Brian Weirkey, Fridley.
Here.
I've got, now, did Dan Deno join us again? Nope. Okay. Let's see. I think I've got Steve Wells, Coon Rapids. All
Here.
right, and Brian Wesp, Anoka.
Here.
Okay, there's additional staff present also, non-members of the council. I will run through my list here and ask them to indicate whether they're present. D. Goodman, Anoka County. Okay. D, are you here?
I'm here, Tony.
All right, thank you. Corey Camp, Anoka County.
Tony, I'm here. It's Corey.
Thank you. Rhonda Sivaraja, Anoka County.
I'm here.
Good, thank you. Val Spritzanatic, Anoka County. Val, are you on? Okay. Terry Stoltzman, Anoka County. Terry? All right, Brian First, Anoka County Sheriff. All right. Kevin Helwig, Anoka County Sheriff.
I'm here, Tony.
Thank you. Kathy Tim, County Attorney's Office. Okay.
Here,
Good, thank you. Charlie Thompson, Columbia Heights Fire.
I'm here, Tony.
George Jensen, Public Safety Data System Manager.
I am present.
Good. Britta Maddox, Public Safety Data System.
I'm here.
Thank you. Jason Nyhart, Public Safety Data System.
I'm here.
Good. Andy Knotts, are you here from the Sheriff's Office? Okay. Kurt Diley from the County Attorney's Office.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Now we have some other guests. We have Brad Johnson, Coon Rapids City Council member, as a guest. Brad, are you on?
I'm on the line.
Good, thank you. And then we have some guests from our neighbors to the west. The people in Stearns County have been interested and were invited to attend this meeting to hear a little bit about the Joint Law Enforcement Council here in Anoka County. And my understanding is we have Stearns County Attorney Janelle Kendall. Janelle, are you on?
I am here.
Good, thank you. And then Chief Deputy County Attorney Mike Lieberg. Mike, are you on?
I am here.
Good. And then I understand we have somebody from the Sheriff's Office, Stearns County Sheriff's Office, Mr. Robert Dickus. Is that correct? Okay, I don't have him speaking up. And then we have Wade Park Police Chief Dave Bentrud, correct? Are you on, David?
Bentrud is here. Thank you for letting us listen in.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everyone. Sorry for the laborious roll call, but I need to do that for purposes of the minutes.
Sorry, Tony, this is Val Sprincenatic. I am here.
Oh, good, thank you. Okay. Is there anybody else I missed who couldn't quite get in because of technology? All right. I think we will go forward. Let me mark it out. Just for the benefit of the new council members and our guests, I'm just going to give a very brief background information on the Joint Law Enforcement Council. The Joint Law Enforcement Council is a joint powers board. It was formed 50 years ago, and its purpose was to connect law enforcement agencies to work together on mutual issues. The composition of this board is that there are 20 cities and 1 township located within Anoka County. 10 of those cities have full-time police departments and are represented on this board by their police chief and someone designated from the city council. The remaining 10 cities in the township have policing by the Anoka County Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff Stewart is also a member of this body, and he designates 2 representatives from the area that he polices to the county board, who then approves their appointment to this body. There is also a representative from the Fire Protection Council, which is a joint powers board also of the fire departments in the county. And I believe there are about 18 fire departments in the county. There are also 2 county commissioners from Anoka County that are designated members of this council, and me, the county attorney. The dues from each law enforcement agency that contribute to the Joint Law Enforcement Council is based on their percentage of calls for service compared to total calls. So the total dues from law enforcement are 31.31%, 60.58% comes from the Central Communications Department, and 8.11% comes from the Fire Protection Council. Our total 2020 budget was $1.632 million. This body also runs a software system called the Public Safety Data System, which services law enforcement, fire, and emergency services throughout the county. There are 3 committees of the Joint Law Enforcement Council. There is a governance committee, a central communications committee, and a data standards committee. There are also user groups. There is a chief law enforcement officers, which is comprised of the sheriff, the 10 police chiefs, and me, a criminal investigations user group, an education, firearms, and training user group, an emergency management user group, and an auto theft task force. This body meets quarterly, and we adopt our budget in July. We will be having discussions about the preliminary discussions about our budget, but we like to give members obviously a heads up for purposes of their budgetary planning going into next year. Are there any questions anybody has about that introduction? All right, hearing none, then I think we will do is I've already taken care of item number 1 on the agenda, which is a welcome. Number 2 is the approval of the minutes of the January 22nd, 2020 meeting. And at this time, I would entertain a motion by anyone to approve those minutes.
Mayor Feldman makes that motion.
Mayor Feldman makes the motion. Is there a second?
Schulte, second.
Okay, Commissioner Scott Schulte is second. Any additions, corrections, modifications?
I had one minor change. Julie Trude here.
Yes.
On the first page in the motion, it should be Mayor.
Okay,
That's all.
thank you, Mayor. With that, any other additions or corrections? All right. Hearing none, I'll move forward. And now you should see the poll on the right side of your screen. Does everybody see that? Okay, and they're voting now. I like it, it's coming in. So all those in favor of the motion, please vote approve. If you do not, vote object. Okay, and the poll results are 21 voted in favor, 22 didn't answer. So we need 16 for purposes of a quorum, so the motion does pass. Okay, let's move on to item number 3, which is the treasurer's report, and that would be attachment B on your agenda. Okay. And Sheriff Stewart, since either you or Corey Camp can take this one, I'll let you decide, Sheriff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can give the high-level overview, and Corey can certainly add the nuts and bolts as the magic behind the curtain. As of March 31st, 2020, the Joint Law Enforcement Council revenues are at $1,221,001. And then expenditures broken down, again, you do all have this as your attachment B within your handout. Total administrative support is at $45,290. And total systems and maintenance support is at $680,720. So our total operational expenses are at $729,968 for a balance of $491,033. As of March 31st, our estimated fund balance is at $1,216,246.
All right.
All right, Tony, this is Corey Camp. I just want to opine on two things on here. As compared to previous years, this is normal. We normally collect a majority of the dues in the first quarter. Followed by that, we have a large outlay for the support contract for our PSDS system, which is in the first quarter as well. And so that's why the expenses are where they are. So this is a normal operation mode, nothing of surprise here.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. And additionally, we have not received the fire contributions at this point for revenue.
Okay,
Yes. And that is also normal.
Correct.
thank you. Anybody have questions of either Sheriff Stewart or Corey Camp of this? At this time, then, I would entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report. You should be seeing it on your screen as we speak.
Julie Trude moves to approve.
Okay, I think Commissioner Schulte was first to do it, and then I believe that second would be Mayor Julie Trude. Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, please vote. All right, I'm seeing an approval. Okay, motion is now closed. The motion does carry. I have 20 votes in favor of it, 22 no answer. All right, let's move to item number 3, which is our 2021 proposed budget. This is attachment C in your materials. And at this time, I would then call on Finance Director Corey Camp to go over attachment C for us. Corey, if you would, please.
All right, thanks, Tony. I'm going to kind of set the stage here for, I think, George to lead in to talk about his proposed changes, okay? And that's kind of what the memo is kind of laying out. Currently, compared to the proposed 2021 budget that we had initially projected, we are coming in $87,000 below, or about a 5.47% decrease. And this is before any changes that George will be walking you through going forward. So, which is good in our current situation out there, fiscally and stuff. This is a good place to be. So, and that's on that first page, as you can see. Now, if you go down to the dues, what this translates is actually into a slight increase in dues of like 0.6%. Look in 2021 on page 2, it goes down because of the shift of the way the costs are laying out on which are paid directly by law versus fire. You're actually going to see central comm decrease by 1.4. Fire would increase by 4.9, and law would increase by about 1.4% for a net 0.7. And this is a far cry from the 7.5% that we had been projecting last year. So we've been able to pare back the expenses by almost 87,000, like I had said, to start with. And George will go over some of his requests. But in looking going forward, this would require a 4.8, 6.3, and 4.5% over the next 3 years after, assuming a 3% increase going forward, what it might look like. So that's the kind of increase in dues that would be required to sustain a 3% increase in expenditures that is projected going forward. And again, by doing this, we've been tapping balance and drawing that down, and that was planned. The goal had been to keep us to around a 20% reserve balance. And so this right now, we're coming in at about a 43.7% reserve balance at the end of 19, and gradually bringing that down to 24 to about 21.5%. So overall, the strategy is still in play that we talked about and approved last year. We're able to curb the need to increase dues by a significant amount, and kind of sitting. So, are there any questions regarding the current budget as it has been laid out before George goes through and talks about some changes that are going to be requested?
If there are any questions of Corey, just a reminder, we will not be voting on the 2021 budget at this meeting. This information is just presented to you for consideration of voting at our July 2020 meeting. And what Corey's referring to is George Jensen, our PSDS manager, will be having a couple of matters brought forward for consideration by this body here shortly, which would add about $38,000 to the current forecasted 2021 budget. I think that's about the figure, isn't it, George?
That is correct.
All right. So are there any questions about the budget? Just to understand, we are anticipating a 3% year increase in our expenditures, as Corey has mentioned. And we have tried to provide for this through a kind of long-range forecasting as to how we are going to make that 3% expenditure. You will notice in the budget that we are proposing in 2021, we are actually going to be $100,000 under. Our operations are going to be $100,000 under our expenditures. We are going to be taking that money from the reserves that we have built up. And that's what Corey's referring to when he talks about the amount of reserves that we have. So that's just, we'll get to that in a little bit when we talk about the proposed budget, but I want to give people just a background on that. So any questions of Corey about the budget as it is structured? Are there any questions? Okay. If not, I think what we will do then is we will then go into item 4A, which is additional budgetary considerations, which is attachment D to your materials. And I will then turn it over to George Jensen, our Public Safety Data Services Manager. George, if you would, please.
Yes, sir.
If you could turn on your audio too, or your video, George, too, please.
My video doesn't work very well on this computer. It'll
Okay.
lag my audio, so
Never mind.
I apologize.
Go ahead.
All right, so we created this document to kind of explain. Let me back up. In January, we proposed 3 items, and they're listed in the first page there, item number 4A, 4B, and 4C. Those are the items that I suggested that we discuss. I was asked to create a document or do some analysis on what the cause and effect would be, and clearly explain the reasons behind each one of these suggestions. If you go on to page 2, you'll see that I talk about the budget, how we were able to, how we looked at the last couple of years, the trends in the individual pockets of money that the budget put into to really narrow down based on actual expenditures in 18 and 19 to come up with a fairly, I consider a very, very accurate 2021 budget. What has been my goal for the last 3 years is to really get it down. So the money that the JLEC is investing in this is getting spent, and less is going into the reserve fund, and that's always been my goal. So you read through that. We start talking about, in the middle of page 2, we start talking about budgetary item number 1, which is the creation of a new position for the JLEC. And that was the SQL database administrator and SQL reporting services. And as we went through this analysis, I decided, I guess, that we're on the right track to meet most of our needs. And we have vendors in position to assist us when we need it. And so for that initial budgetary item number 1 from last January, I want to just remove that. That's going to be my recommendation. We'll just drop it. I did put the detail in here so we can refer to it if the issue does come up again. I'm not sure it will, but if it does, we have the data, what we were thinking at this time, and we can move on to the item number 2, which is on, should be on your page. Hang on, your page starts on page 5. And this one is one that I'm would hope could pass fairly. It's a restructuring of the PSD law manager position, PSDS law RMS manager position. Britta Maddox is our law RMS manager, and currently it'll explain in here that the Joint Law Enforcement Council gets 80% of her time, and the city of Coon Rapids has her doing some tasks for them, 20%. So we, as a public safety data system, we have Britta's time 4 days a week, essentially. And what this proposal is suggesting is that we would like to take on, get her 100% of the time. And I'll explain, this allows me to meet some of the obligations that were explained in the budgetary item number 1. So the reporting, the SSSR reporting part of this. So we go through the requested action through the JLEC is to
Did we lose you, George?
So let me just get here. We would like to adjust the contract with the city of Coon Rapids to make Britta a 100% dedicated employee with the JLEC, and with this position becoming responsible as her immediate supervisor. So I'd become her immediate supervisor. The city of Coon Rapids would continue to provide the human resource element of the contract, This would make her position match completely with her counterpart on the fire side and provide 20% more resources to the PSDS management team. The move would add $28,000 to the law enforcement portion of the 2021 budget,
Okay.
which would position from up to $112,000 for that account. The change could occur this year. Chief Brad Weiss and I have discussed this, that using some, what I know will be unused funds from the rhodium piece of the PSDS project. Everybody should remember that we dropped rhodium last November. We made a vote, or last October, we made the vote to drop rhodium out of our system. But we had budgeted $60,000, which was the suggested or the estimated cost that maintaining that program would have been. So we have $60,000 that I know will drop to the bottom line or into the fund. We could use some of those funds, which would add to about $7,000 to bring Bretta on starting 1 October.
Okay.
That's
your
proposal.
recommendation?
That's my recommendation.
Chief Wise, I know this affects the city of Coon Rapids. Do you have any comments at this time?
This is Brad Weiss speaking. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, George and I have talked about it in detail, and Brita can be made available for the fourth quarter of 2020 here, and the numbers that George has put forward are an accurate reflection of her actual costs.
Okay. All right. Thank you. At this time, I guess because we are now increasing Brita Maddox's time from 80% to 100% to be funded by the Joint Law Enforcement Council, I would ask if someone wishes to make a motion to accomplish what George has just described. That is increasing
Mr.
Brita's...
Chair, Mayor Feldman, I have a question if I can.
Sure. Go ahead.
Before you make the motion, I just have a clarification. I have no problem with this position being done here, but in the minutes that we just passed, it was projected to be a $24,000 gain, up from $84,108, and now I see it at $28,000. So I'd like to have that explained as far as that difference. Once again, I would vote for this position enhancement, but I'd like to know why there's a difference of that $4,000. That can be explained.
George, do you want to respond to that?
I guess I don't remember how I came up to $24,000 number back in January. What I do know is this. What I did is I looked at how we are basically Jason and Brita are equal on the pay scale, and so I budget them equally. Although right now I currently budget Brita at 80%, where Jason is at 100%. In 2021, I raised Jason, and this might be where it come from. At that time, maybe I hadn't had this number yet, but judging from the past 3 years or past year that Jason's been on, I raised his pocket of money, if you will, to $112,000 to cover his expenses, and so I matched that to Brita, which should be fairly accurate.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chair, that would explain it, because the difference was 84,000 to 108 at 24,000. So if you add it to 4,000 to 112, that would make it 28,000. So thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't quite get all of that. It was a little squawk
Well, Mr. Chair, on the minutes, it says the increase was originally projected at 24,000, going from 84,000 salary to 108. But as George just stated, he raised it to 112,000. So that would be the extra 4,000 to make it 28,000.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Mayor?
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions of George? Otherwise, I will then entertain a motion to increase Brita Maddox to 100% JLEC funded.
Mayor Feldman makes that motion, St. Francis.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Wise Coon Rapids will make the second.
Okay. Chief Wise makes seconds the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? All right. Hearing none, I think we're going to put it on for voting. Okay. The time limit is up. I have 20 votes to approve. I have no objection. So the motion does pass. George, if you want to continue, item number 3, please.
Item number 3 really comes from, in 2019, we started the process of removing IQ from our system. The board will remember, or the committee should remember, that we've had problems with IQ since the very beginning, and it's documented in this explanation. Because of that, we put a lot of emphasis, a lot of work into our Anoka County Central Records browser. This year, we're going to put a lot of effort into getting that browser up to speed. So it's a better tool for everyone. This is a tool we own. We can decide the direction it goes. We have complete control over it. I think it's going to be a much better solution we could have ever gotten out of IQ. Looking forward in the maintenance of this tool, because it is now #1 data mining tool that touches both law systems, computer-aided dispatch and records management system, including legacy data from before we went live with the current system. I need to project some more dollars, or more budget at least, for any customizations or fixes that come to a cost towards the JLEC, just so we're covered. I don't have to keep coming back for money to make fixes. I think I don't need a whole lot. I just wanted to get about $10,000 more in that pocket. There'll be a little more flexibility in using those dollars to keep browser running and make improvements as necessary. So the requested action is for fiscal year 2021. I propose changing the existing contract for Code 4 group to add an additional $10,000 to the authorized budget, creating budget for those additional customizations deemed as necessary by the public safety management team. This would raise Code 4 contract from a total of $17,000 per year to $27,000 per year.
Okay. Thank you, George. Are there any questions of George? Any questions? Any comments by anybody?
Yeah,
Chief Wise.
Yeah, this is Brad Wise here. And actually, I just wanted to say that this topic was brought up in the governance committee meeting 2 weeks ago. And it was the consensus of the group to make this recommendation to the Joint Law Enforcement Council to approve this expense. The short version of events is that browser is arguably the most important tool that law enforcement in Anoka County has to dig into our records as part of an investigation.
Okay. And this browser customization obviously would work for the benefit of individual law enforcement agencies to be able to customize those reports from our records management system. Is that correct, Chief Wise?
Yeah, Chair Palumbo, this is Brad Wise again. Actually, primarily, it's just to have the records, the police records that are created, that browser just allows us to search records for, say, activities of an individual suspect, or it could eventually become more sophisticated to look for vehicle descriptions and so on. But it's just a way to search our data. It's the tool that we use to search our records management system for information, and that tool has always been a very important tool for the duration of my career. And as that tool becomes more sophisticated, it just simply gets better, where it's able to dig into the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of records that Anoka County generates to find information related to investigations that are active.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Any other comments on the recommendation? At this time, I would then entertain a motion to approve a $10,000 addition to the proposed 2021 budget for this Code 4 group.
Wells, so moved.
Councilmember Wells, move. Is there a second?
Workey, second.
Chief Workey from Fridley is second. Any other discussion on on this item? Hearing none, the poll questions are up on your screen. Please vote within 30 seconds.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Mayor Deno from Anoka, or from Oak Grove.
Yes, Mayor.
I've been here the whole time. When you called roll, I wasn't able to respond.
Okay. We will note your presence at this meeting, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay. Time is up. I have 19 that approve and no disapprove, so the motion does pass. Thank you. And I guess that will then, just by way of information on the proposed 2021 budget, right now, the expenditures exceed our dues by $100,000. So what's in your packet is a 1.592 100 total budget. That, based on the motions today, will be $1,630,100. So you will get that new budget in July, but I just want everybody to understand that what was passed out as preliminary budget will now be increased by $38,000 because of the previous two motions. All right. That's just an FYI. At this point, then let's move on to the next item, which is going to be the I guess, Chief Wise, item 5A, Governance Committee. Anything you wish to add, Chief, about the Public Safety Data System Governance Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brad Wise speaking. No, I would say generally no. We met 2 weeks ago via video just like this and managed to muddle our way through it. Perhaps George might want to weigh in, but George does a status report for the PSDS system that's in writing and I believe was sent out in advance to the members of this committee.
That is correct. There would be attachment E. Okay. With that, that's a great segue. George, why don't we go to 5A, Romanet 1, information updates, if you would, George, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Well, I'll go through the whole thing. That's kind of why I type it out for you. Everything's highlighted in yellow. That's changed since the last update. I think one of the highlights to look at is some of the power of purchasing through Logis. We use Cisco Umbrella to limit website visits in any computer that's on the public safety data system network. This is a tool that can be used basically to limit. We can identify a website we don't want people to go to or want to go to, and that's all they can go to are those sites. Usually we pay $39 a license with Logis, and their purchasing power, that's going to be down to $11 per user. We use about 100 of those a year. So that's pretty, it's not a lot of savings, but it's just a great example of our working relationship with Logis. Other than that, we're kind of just maintaining things right now. I will say I've stopped work on the new CAD and mobile project because of the COVID-19 stuff. It's just, we can't get anywhere. We can't get anything done. We can't see visitors. We can't see demos, all that kind of stuff. It's hard to get the group together. So we pretty much stopped all work on that right now. And I'm not sure when we'll continue that work. That'll be up to Val and her team. And other than that, it's just status quo, trying to keep everything up and running for you. We continue to work very hard. I continue to work very hard on the browser data project. We've made some discoveries today that we're working through. And then Britta and Jason are doing their usual excellent job of keeping up the record management systems. And that's all I have.
George, if I can, remember we talked about the Minnesota Security Consortium to provide a quote for services. George, if you just want to update us on that, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think it's right up at the top. It was one of the items that we had talked about last month, or last set of committee meetings. We actually had the vendors stop by and present to the governance committee. We introduced the package to the JLEC. right away, 3 of the agencies involved with the JLEC decided they did not need to be a part of it because of their relationship with Logis. And then over the last 3 months, we've collected another 3 agencies have stepped up, which is over the majority in order to get this passed. So I've notified the vendor that we're no longer interested in trying to negotiate a deal with them. And that's where we left that.
Okay. Just for the benefit of the new members and our guests, Minnesota Security Consortium was an organization that was going to provide consulting for BCA and FBI audits. So it appears to members of the council that they can find probably that help in other ways. So just be aware that was discussed at our January meeting, has now been dropped off. Okay? Any questions of George on his update? Anyone?
Yes, Mayor Feldman, St. Francis, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Just a clarification here on item C, Cisco Umbrella. Am I under the understanding that it says here the purchasing power of Logis has given us the ability to purchase the next higher level of functionality with CU for about $11, so we're paying less money for a higher function? Is that correct?
George?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
I'd like to hear that. Thank you so much.
Yep. Any other questions of George on his update? Okay. All right. Hearing none, then I think we will move on to item 5B, which is the Data Standards Committee. Chief Jeff Caters, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Data Standards Committee met electronically Monday, April 13th at 10 a.m. Our agenda involved the potential partnering with Central Square and sharing some of our PSDS data with them for development of some future products. 3 of them specifically: Smart Patrol, which would be telling our departments where to send resources and how to make the best use of them. It's an AI predictive analysis tool. And then number 2, our text entity extraction tool, which basically allows an officer out in the field to type data into their narrative, and the computer extracts data for and fills in data fields on a report. And then the 3rd product would be Sidekick, a smartphone app for officers with relevant roll call type information. These are all in development, and the request was made to the PSDS group and the Data Standards Committee for having access to some of this data in a non-live format. What our group decided on was that we wanted a formal proposal from Central Square, and it's very important to our group that we're getting something out of this partnership and not just helping Central Square develop their new products. Members of the Data Standards Group have a call tomorrow with Central Square to get a demo of these products and then to further discuss the terms of a contract with them. Of course, we would bring that contract back to this group for approval. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Chief Caters. Are there any questions of the Chief Caters? Anyone? For purposes of our guests, Central Square was the contract vendor that provided the public safety data system software to us. Any question? Chief Caters, do you have any sort of idea what sort of money that Central Square is looking for?
I do not. The terms of the contract haven't been set. Basically, they're requesting, they want access to some of the data that our group has so that they can test some of these products, these new products. And we would want to see the terms of that contract. We want to make sure that our group is receiving some benefit from providing the data to them in a closed environment or secure environment.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. Any questions? Any other questions of Chief Caters? Anyone? All right. Seeing none, thank you, Chief. Let's move on to item 5C, which is Central Communications Committee. Sheriff Stewart, would be attachment F on your packet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee met on April 14th and had a variety of topics. As you indicated, they'll be seen as attachment F within your handouts. A couple of the highlights are that we did revisit the bylaws for the Central Communications Committee as kind of the relaunch, and we should have those to present at our next Central Communications Committee meeting and to the Joint Law Enforcement Council at the next quarterly meeting. We also reviewed some of the personnel updates and FYI for the larger group. There were 6 dispatchers that started about 3 weeks ago, and they are now out on the floor, and we have 6 more dispatchers that started this past week. And a lot of unique changes going on with the pandemic. The new dispatchers are being isolated during their training, et cetera. So it's, as with all of us, it's a kind of a work in progress adjusting to the new norms. There's also been some struggles filling the senior radio technician position, and specifically there were no applicants, so there's some ongoing discussion on options on what that could look like. Some operational updates. Val gave us some updates on what they were doing specifically within Central Communications for COVID-19 and the fact that the center is now secured with no outside entrance. It's really locked down to 911 personnel and essential personnel only. The alternate PSAP is up and running, and that's partly for social distancing, as well as it's a great opportunity for us to make sure that the systems are working. So over by radio repair for the squads who might drive past there once in a while, that's operational. And again, we just continue to explore other options and potential best practices in a wide variety of areas. Val and Dee had also been meeting with several of the fire chiefs recently, looking for ways to better partner and develop improvements, and that's been going very well. We got an update on the Anoka-Hennepin School District radio system, and the high-level version is that Anoka County will be housing a repeater system, and the BDAs will be placed within the schools, which will dramatically enhance coverage within the schools. So whether it's a medical or an active shooter situation or a hostile event, we should be seeing noticeable improvements for officers and deputy response within the schools for Anoka-Hennepin. So that's a real nice win as well. Again, there's a lot of other details within the attachment F for additional Central Communications Committee information, but that'll cover the highlights for now, and that would conclude my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sheriff Stewart. Any questions of the Sheriff? Anyone? Okay, we're on attachment F. Thank you, Sheriff, and that'll segue into computer-aided dispatch, Central Communications Manager Val Spritzananek. Val, could you give us an updated report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple real quick items to touch on. We have updated our current CAD in the training mode. However, with everything going on, we have not made the update to production. It was supposed to have come out in February, but we're holding off on that. So hoping to get that maybe next quarter if everything settled down a little bit. And then we had our first meeting this week on a program called ASAP to PSAP, which is a direct link to alarm companies that call in alarms, fire alarms, medical alarms. Instead of having to call into dispatch and us relay the information, it'll work similar to our CAD to CAD, where it'll just come into us and we will see it and we can dispatch it right away. It'll cut our alarm times by, we're thinking 1.5 to 2 minutes. And last year we had approximately 12,000 alarm calls that we're hoping to eliminate and just have it come right to us via the computer and a link. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Val. Can you give us a little bit of update for our non-law enforcement members on this call about what is happening with information received about the coronavirus and first responders in terms of dispatching the information?
Sure. So the governor a couple weeks ago signed an executive order allowing first responders to be advised if there is somebody that has tested positive for COVID at a residence. So the information comes out from the Minnesota Department of Health down through the Department of Public Safety out to the PSAPs, and then, which is us, I'm sorry, that's a public safety answering point. We put that information on the address as an alert. And then if we get a call at that address, the dispatchers are advising the responders that there is somebody at that address that has tested positive. We are not allowed to give out any names or anything. It's just tied to a specific address. You want more information than that, or?
Well, anything else that would be helpful if you could.
Okay. Well, also all the calls that are coming in to dispatch, we're asking screening questions. If it's a medical call, of course, we're asking if they're coughing, have a fever, difficulty breathing, and if it would be a call where contact would need to be made by a first responder, say somebody's fire alarm was going off and the fire responders have to actually go into the residence. We are asking if anybody has been sick or if anybody has self-quarantined. So our goal is to give the responders as much information as possible to help keep them safe too.
All right. Thank you, Val. Are there any questions of Val by anyone on the call? Any questions by anyone? All right. Thank you for that update, Val. Let's move to item number 6, which is the Fire Protection Council. Chief Thompson.
Mr. Chair, members of Joint Law, last Thursday we did conduct a Anoka County Fire Protection Council meeting, and as we're doing today, it was over WebEx. It was somewhat of a modified meeting. However, typically in the past we'd adopt our budget in January, but because of the change of our bylaws, that was presented at last week's meeting, and it was successfully passed. So the 2021 budget was presented for the entire group, voted on, and passed. We had a very good turnout by the elected officials. It was well over 80%. So other than that, it was simple housekeeping items that we addressed and nothing out of the ordinary. With that, Mr. Chair, I could open it up to any questions or comments that the group may have.
Thank you, Chief Thompson. Any questions of the chief? Any questions on that? And just for information purposes, I think Chief Swenson, you are the Joint Law Enforcement Council liaison to the Fire Protection Council. Is that correct? Chief Swenson?
Mr. Chair, no, I don't serve as a liaison, but I am on the North County Fire Protection Council.
Okay.
Charlie was the designated representative to the Joint Law Enforcement Council from the Fire Protection Council.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Just for purposes of, purposes of our guests, yeah, we do have, we'd like to have information being passed between both councils so that they're kind of fully aware, since we are, of course, joined together on the budget in terms of fire and law. And so we like to certainly exchange information wherever we can. That's why we certainly have people on both bodies. That's just an FYI.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, Jim Sir. I was distracted by another thing going on here, but we have, I believe I'm the liaison because I tend to attend both meetings anyway.
Thank you, Sheriff. I forgot about that. So you are the designated liaison, correct?
If you say so, I believe that's the case.
So be it. Yeah, the power of the chair. Okay. No, I don't remember exactly who we designated somebody a long time ago, but at least we have people from the law enforcement side attending the Fire Protection Council, which is, I guess, basically the purpose. So thank you for that. All right. Anything else, Chief Thompson?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Anything else, Chief?
No, no, I have nothing further to report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Let's move to item number 7, the user groups, the Chief Law Enforcement Officer Group.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Eric Peterson with the City of Anoka Police Department. On April 15th, the Anoka County Chiefs of Police met and were able to handle our regular business, a regular agenda by a WebEx meeting. And I think that went well. At that meeting, we brought in Anoka County Emergency Manager Terry Stoltzman and Director of Anoka County Public Health to provide some information and updates. As we know that the updates in reference to the COVID pandemic are ever changing. And at that meeting, they were able to provide some current situational awareness, which has since changed. We were able to, as I said, maintain our regular meeting and agenda, but we felt the need as Anoka County Chiefs to meet at least once a week. So we've been meeting on Thursdays in the afternoon. Those meetings are not, there's not a set agenda, but it's a way of sharing information and getting a sense of what each city is suffering from and what plans in place that they have so that we can be all on the same page as best as possible. I think those meetings are quite helpful, and we can have an opportunity to speak candidly and do some problem solving. Sure, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Any questions of Chief Peterson on the Cleos? Thank you, Chief. Let's move on to criminal investigations. Chief Deputy Helwig, I think you usually cover that, don't you? Or is that Brian first?
No, Mr. Chair, Chief Deputy Helwig with the Sheriff's Office. I've got that portion here as well as the training update. As for CID, we brought on a new detective on this past Monday, John Wilson, who joins us from the Eden Prairie Police Department. John was a sergeant with Eden Prairie, and we look forward to getting him up to speed here. And then our other vacancy in CID will be filled May 18th by Julie Dorr, who comes to us from Crystal Police Department. And then we had a CS crime scene unit vacancy, and an offer has gone out to Nick Smith, who's accepted. Nick is with the St. Cloud Police Department. And just of note, CID and crime scene are on scene at a residence up in Ham Lake. This morning we had a 911 call there, and deputies arrived. They heard a single gunshot. We have confirmed 2 fatalities inside the house, and we're not looking for anyone outside of those 2. So that concludes my CID report. And then just a quick update on training. All training and open range have been canceled through May 15th, and we're kind of waiting to see what the governor's next orders are. If law enforcement agencies do need the range for training purposes, it is available, and we can help get you set up there. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Chief Helwig. All right, let's move on to Emergency Management. Terry Stoltzman, are you on the line? Terry? Okay, our Emergency Manager. Apparently he must have other things going on. Let's move to item 7E, the Auto Theft Task Force.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brad Wise with Coon Rapids. The Auto Theft Task Force has pared back their activities, but that doesn't mean they're not working. They are involved in an active investigation. I guess it's out of Anoka County, but vehicles are still getting stolen, and in this case, they're being stolen for the purpose of being shipped overseas. So just letting the rest of the members of the Joint Law Enforcement Council know that while this virus does change the way business gets done, business is still getting done. And it's not considered a free time for criminals. And as a side note, same is true of traffic enforcement. We in Coon Rapids certainly are very active in traffic enforcement, getting people to slow down. So that's my report for the Auto Theft Task Force.
Thank you. And just as an aside, Chief, we get indications, Department of Public Safety, that even though traffic is down, but fatalities are up. Do you have any information on that at all, Chief?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Brad Wise again. Yes, that unfortunately is true. The data suggests that the speeds are very high, and indeed there are additional fatalities throughout the state. So every agency, I think, has adopted safe traffic stop practices where they can keep social distance while still doing enforcement. And we in Coon Rapids, like I said, are doing special projects to get the freeway speeds in particular down. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Chief. Any questions, Chief Wise?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mayor Feldman, question for Chief Weiss. Would you think, Chief, that would be more because there's less traffic on the road and people are taking opportunities that they shouldn't?
Yeah, Mayor Feldman, Brad Wise again. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. The freeway is seen as wide open, and where people are accustomed to the speed of traffic overall, keeping their personal speed in check, is that fewer cars seemingly is perceived as an opportunity to go fast. In addition, I think at least initially there was a perception that there was less law enforcement on the roads, or that law enforcement wasn't going to prioritize traffic enforcement. That is not the case. That is most definitely not the case.
Yeah, thank you. I know our Chief Schweiger says the same thing here, and he's on, our staff is doing the same thing, our department. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of Chief Wise on his report? Okay, thank you. I think then we'll move to item number 8, which is the elected officials' input. This is a point where I go around the table asking elected officials who are on this council for any input into their view of what they are seeing certainly go through this council. And I will, as I did with the roll call, I will start with Patrick Antonin, the City of Circle Pines. Pat.
Yes, Chair. The only update I have is with our police chief search. We're doing our first review of applications starting tomorrow. I believe as of last week, we're up to over 15 applications, so we're still getting a lot of interest in that. So that's exciting, and we're thankful we have a very veteran chief on hand right now to handle this crisis for us. So Chief Cohen got tied up, and he extends his regards to the group, and that's all I have from Circle Pines and Centennial Lakes Police Department.
Thank you very much, Pat. Let's move on to Commissioner Julie Brasted.
Thank you, Chair Palumbo. Really don't have anything specific, just, all our departments are working extremely hard to cover the situations that are arising under our current situation, but very thankful for all the first responders that we have out there.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Let's move on. Lino Lakes Council Member Tony Cavan, please.
No additional input at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Keeping going. Mayor Dan Dano from Oak Grove.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We had our fire chief of many years step down, Kurt Hollerman. Those of you that knew him, he's been replaced with an interim fire chief, Rob Engler, who was our assistant fire chief previously. So we're working through the details on that. Rob is doing a good job so far, so hopefully he can move into that position. We've kind of set up a two-man duty crew that people are signing up for so that we can keep cross-contamination from our crews and keep too many people going out on these medical calls. So that's it from Oak Grove. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Feldman, St. Francis.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to take time to thank all the police chiefs, fire and police and their staffs for the great job you're doing through these trying times. Elected officials aren't on the front lines as often or as much, as often as you people are. So once again, I truly appreciate what you're doing. I know I tell my staff and department heads that all the time. We're trying times. We'll get through this together as we are doing already. But once again, thank you, because like I say again, as a city official, I have meetings I attend, some on Zoom, some on WebEx, some in person at a distance, but still you people are on the front lines every day. And once again, I thank you for your service in this trying time. And I hope that days are going to get better down the road, and I hope sooner than later. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Feldman. Let's move on. Jeff Mentz from Ramsey, City Council Member.
Thank you, Chair Palumbo. As we've already heard, I would like to thank all of the hardworking folks at Ramsey City Hall. Once again, if it was ever brought to our attention, the people are on the front line, the police, the fire, the folks that answer the phones, all of them. It's just like the folks at the front line of the grocery store. We never truly appreciated them before, and we do now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I don't believe the mayor of Spring Lake Park, Robert Nelson, is on. Did you join later, sir? Okay, I don't have it. Or Dave Oswald from Fridley City Council Member.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got nothing to add as far as the agenda or anything like that, but I would like to thank, as everyone else has, all the police and first responders that have really stepped up for this, for their flexibility and adapting to this ever-changing situation and doing just a wonderful job. Also, just a very big thank you to the Coon Rapids Police Department. And I know also I've seen some friendly officers, and there may be some other ones. There's a cruise night that's really taken off up in Coon Rapids on Saturday evenings. They've done a wonderful job of letting people get out and enjoy that, but also keeping things under control. So a great job by them, and thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's move on to, I don't think Columbia Heights Mayor Donna Schmidt joined us, I don't believe. So we'll then go to County Commissioner Scott Schulte. If you could, Commissioner.
Stay safe, everybody.
All right. Very succinct. Thank you, Commissioner. Let's move on to Andover Mayor Julie Trude, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I also appreciate all the hard work of our first responders and those that have to continue to work through a time of a lot of anxiety for people. Our city continues to have an open city hall, and our building counter's been busy. We're doing things with implementing the safe distancing. We've had 4 council meetings at City Hall since the shutdown or since the stay-at-home order, using safe distancing. We have been able to implement some virtual meetings for those on our commissions who are not able to or not interested in attending at our City Hall. And building continues as an essential activity. We've had 28 new homes permits pulled so far this year, several in the last couple of weeks even. People are really enjoying the outdoors and trails. I think we see a lot of people accessing the county park system. I noticed they're parking in our city parks and then crossing the road because they're on certain, and maybe one of the commissioners could comment whether people can access the parks with their cars without having a permit at this time. I get that question quite often as people are trying to be outside a little bit. And just want to end with thank you, everybody, and especially Doreen for giving me a little help in setting up my first WebEx meeting. And I want to thank our county attorney for accommodating all of us in different styles. It's a new way of doing business. Appreciate your work on all that.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Schulte or Commissioner Brastad, can you answer the mayor's question about whether park permits are being enforced? Do you have any idea about that? I'm not aware of it, but I don't know if either of you two have information.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Schulte. I don't know if it's being enforced or not. I know that our park revenues are down to 0, so that means people aren't buying passes. But I'm unsure if it's being enforced at this time or not. I will check with the administrator and report back.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, let's move on to Council Member Steve Wells.
Just the same as everyone else, thanks to police and fire and all the first responders, and I just hope people remember it after this is over. That's it.
Thank you, Council Member. Then Council Member Brian West from Anoka.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a rather intense situation on Friday in the city of Anoka, and under the excellent leadership of Chief Peterson, his staff, mutual aid from the county and from the city of Ramsey, a active situation was subdued. And I want to say thank you to our police department and to those mutual aid departments also. One other thing to touch on, the joint fire board from Anoka and the city of Champlin is continuing to work on a fire chief, which will hopefully be rectified here in the very near future. But otherwise, thank you to all.
All right. Thank you, Council Member. All right, let's move on then to item number 9, old business. Anybody have any matters from previous meetings they wish to be brought up right now? Seeing none. All right, let's go to item number 10, which is the new business by Chief Padani from Blaine. Is going to give a short presentation. It should be attachment G in your packet. And probably we didn't anticipate this in January quite to the extent we do now, but it's police officer wellness by enhancing resiliency. And Chief Padani has graciously agreed to kind of give this body a short address on what he has found within the Blaine Police Department. So if you could, Chief Padani.
Thank you, Chair Palumbo. And thank you, everybody, for your patience in advance here as I look out the window and see the sun shining. So prior to COVID and coronavirus, wellness was certainly a huge topic of conversation, public safety. It continues to be, but it's being overshadowed right now. And we have a fairly robust program here in Blaine that I want to give you a quick overview of so you can understand, particularly for the elected officials, what kind of motivates this and what are some of the components that we're looking at and that other agencies are looking at as well as far as wellness goals. And I'm going to focus on mental wellness as well. There's certainly a lot of physical wellness programs in place, but I'm going to focus on mental wellness today. A few years ago, there was a legislative change that has substantially affected the number of PTSD claims in public safety across the state. Some quick data statistics here. According to PERF, which, if you don't know, is a Police Executive Research Forum, and also League of Minnesota Cities data, and I think most of your cities will support this. About 85% of your budgets are spent on personnel, with a range being 61 to 98.5. We talk about our cars having warranties. We get, you heard, a substantial amount of information regarding the public safety data system. We have performance clauses and do maintenance updates on softwares and computers. And we're always trying to get the latest and greatest technology as far as body cameras, new tasers, better guns, you name it. But we don't always pay attention to what our most valuable asset is and what are we doing to take care of that. Ethically, it's obvious that we need to take care of our staff, but it's also apparent financially that we should be taking care of our most valuable asset. The last few years, the claims for the PTSD claims in the state of Minnesota have risen substantially. In 2019, they went up 62% alone. And since 2013, there have been a total of 88 police claims more now, totaling $13.3 million, with the average cost for a single PTSD claim being about $151,000. The numbers went up back prior to 2015 to the legislative change. PTSD claims were about 6% of all claims. Now, from 2016 to 19, they jumped up to 28% and are going well beyond that now. So we're seeing them across the field. I venture to say most agencies in our county, or at least a good handful of the agencies in our county, have had one, if not more, PTSD claims from their officers or potentially from firefighters as well. So we've been developing our program kind of for years, but it's really taken on more steam here in recent times. And, this is not an insurance policy, but it does help. Some principles of the program. First of all, we avoid putting this into contract or collective bargaining, our wellness components. We don't want to put on the table for bargaining for something that can be given and taken away as a bargaining chip. This is really about taking care of our staff. And we're working across the board with certainly our HR, but our finance, and other departments in the city for programs justification and implementation. And it's important to be cautious to what we define as a benefit package versus agency culture as well. We do kind of a multi-tiered response that we've broken down into preparation, action, and response when we're looking at the program components. First of all, preparation, the pre-components, the pre-employment, if you will, that really starts with culture establishment. It's important to have a culture of accountability and compassion, but it's also important to have a tone of openness and to the normalcy of psychological wellness. It's something that's been so taboo in the past, but we can't ignore this. It really is just a normal component of working in public safety. When we are going through recruiting processes, we're ensuring all the technical requirements postings, but also the desired traits and agency culture, including an overview of a wellness program, and then ensuring legal compliance with that as well. When we're interviewing prospective candidates, we're discussing mental wellness and openness to it with potential candidates in the pre-employment interviews. And then we're avoiding asking about protected information as well. And then we work with our psychologists when we're doing our psychological testing to pay particular attention to mental health and resilience and coping mechanisms, and then candidates' background and how they've coped with adversity in the past, focusing on matters of ethics and life experience to ensure that they have that resiliency coming into the field. And once officers are hired, we have a department therapist who's actually on retainer. Her name is Marie Ridgway, and she's an integral part of our program. As part of that, we pay a monthly retainer for blanket services, and then we also have some a la carte services that are inclusive in that as well. The new officers go through a presentation with the therapist, and they actually have an initial mental health check-in where they learn about different tools for resiliency and things to watch for and what to expect in the public safety field. Then we also have a Healthy Families workshop. I know a number of departments do this as well, where new officers and their support system, whether it's their family members or their friends, they attend a family workshop in which they learn about not only the department, an overview of the department, our mission, our core values, but also our wellness program as well. And the family members get to learn about stressors, indicators of PTSD or emotional trauma that they may see in their family members, and then also how to help them build resilience, not only for their family member that's working in the field, but for themselves as well. We also cover an overview of other wellness options, including the county-wide public safety peer counseling program that all the agencies here are part of, understanding critical incident stress debriefing, the program called Safe Call Now, which is a suicide hotline and a confidential suicide hotline for first responders, of which the department is a part of this program. Also the Wills for Heroes program as well, because that is kind of a wellness-related component. As part of the employment, people also go through an annual wellness check-in, which we call kind of the checkup from the neck up. All personnel within the department have a mental health wellness check-in on approximately their hire date anniversary. This is part of their workday. It's scheduled when they're on duty, even though they're out of uniform. And it is not, they are not subject to call at that time. And then they also have included therapy sessions. If an officer or their family member wishes to use therapy sessions, they will be given approximately six sessions that are covered by the city and are billed to the department. Now, we're not notified who uses these sessions by name. We simply get an invoice every month with a client number, and the therapist tracks that information because we want to maintain that protected data, but we also want to ensure accountability with that we're covering things as well. So we don't know who is and who's getting those sessions. There's simply, nor the substance of them. There's also no diagnosis required. It's simply a matter of them having that covered. So let me get back to my notes here. I apologize. So also, there is no, as I mentioned, there's no diagnosis required by the therapist. This is a concern for when people are seeing other many times if you are getting therapeutic services, you're required to have a diagnosis to have that covered by insurance. And there's a stigma some people have about having to have some type of formal diagnosis. Even if you're getting something like marriage counseling, you usually have to get like relational affective disorder diagnosis or something in order for your insurance to cover that. So by not having a required diagnosis, the officers have more freedom and less worry about being able to seek assistance for whatever it is that they're struggling with. Also, whenever we have a critical incident, the therapist is used where they can be called to our department to help diffuse an incident at the time or speak with officers later. This is separate than the critical incident stress debriefing with peer counselors. But they can come out. We took advantage of this as an example when we lost one of our officers in an off-duty motorcycle crash. So we actually had the therapist respond to the department to be available for staff at the time and subsequent times as well. So those are kind of the primary response elements. Some other things that we don't currently have in place that we were working on for future was addiction rehabilitation services. I'm not sure if any of the departments here currently have this. but I've heard of other places in the country that do, where if a staff member comes forward and they want to voluntarily try to seek to get into rehabilitation for substance abuse, they do that, and it is covered. We work in conjunction with the insurance provider. It's covered by the treatment is covered by the insurance provider, but they continue to collect a salary, sans overtime and things like that, while they are getting the treatment. And there are a lot of restrictions that we have outlined as part of the proposal, but that avoids them having to take the leave. And this has to be something where it's proactive from the staff member. It can't be something that's a result of discipline if someone shows up for work impaired or something like that. It has to be something that they proactively want to get the help for. And then also financial planning services under municipal retainer as well, to include personal and family matters for staff members. And this is some of these things we're actually looking at doing citywide, not just for officers, but when you have people, when people are less worried about the stressors, whether it's financial or addiction, whatever it may be, they can get those things taken care of. They feel they'll be more productive employees as well. So that's a very high-level overview of our program. I have pages and pages of data that I won't bore you with that talks about the ancillary costs of, and that I would venture to say there are multiple agencies currently on the chat that could ascertain they've had the claims as well. And this isn't an insurance policy to negate the claims, but it certainly does help to prevent them and help take care of our staff members. So this is just one example. We call ours our POWER program, but there's other ones out there. With that, I can either open up to questions, or I can provide my email out there if people want to contact me on the side with any questions as well.
All right. Thanks, Chief. How long has the POWER program been in effect in the city of Blaine?
Well, we started with the having a therapist on retainer years ago. We actually lost an officer to suicide a number of years ago. And as part of that, one of our sergeants had proposed this program, and all these additional components have really given rise over the last 3 years, about 2 to 3 years. So we did do family workshops previously. That was the other thing that was pre-existing, but we've enhanced the program over the last 2 years, and we've had a lot of requests from agencies across the state to present it at different statewide training academies and things. And there's always going to be some concerns, and we work closely with HR to sort some of those concerns out. But I think overall, it's better than nothing right now. And it's constantly evolving, but it's been going very well for us. We've got a lot of positive feedback from staff. Even applicants have mentioned in the hiring process that they've sought out the department because they're aware of the program and how well reputed it is. So we're pretty happy about that too. So.
Thank you, Chief. I assume somebody from Blaine PD or at least City of Blaine would be available to discuss this with other agencies if they have an interest. Is that correct, Chief?
100%. Yep. All the law enforcement in the room here certainly know how to get a hold of me. But if any elected officials or anybody else has any questions, I can give you my email is bpadani@blainemn.gov.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Any questions on this call of Chief Padani? Thank you, Chief. And at this point, I guess we're just ready to adjourn the meeting, but I guess I will certainly call upon our guests from the West, see if there's any comments they wish to make. Chief Bentrud, anything you want to add to this meeting?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to listen in. There are several of us from Stearns County, and I'll be honest, I'm envious how Anoka County does business. I think it's a tremendous model, great collaboration, cost sharing, and I'm hoping that we can replicate some of what you guys are doing in our county. We're not quite as big. We don't have as many big cities, but the way you guys seem to get along and work together is very impressive. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chief. There are those nice words. County Attorney Janelle Kendall, any thoughts?
allowing us in today. This is very interesting. It's interesting that you are running it from a county attorney's perspective. I can see the complication, got the subcommittees, there's a lot of structure, it makes a lot of sense. I also want to thank everyone for hearing some of the challenges that you're having and how crazy people are still running from the cops like they don't think we're there. What the heck? We're having exactly those same experiences here, and our numbers and our incoming remain robust. So it's also helpful for me, just the perspective of hearing from another county. We're not crazy, and very interesting. Thank you so much for including us.
Thanks, Janelle. Apparently people are more alike than they are different, huh? Your Chief Deputy, Mike Lieber, anything to add, Mike? Apparently not.
No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
All right, and then I think we had Robert Dickus from Stearns County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah, Dave, thank you. I appreciate the offer, like everybody else said too. Gives us some insight and perspective as to what kind of what a structured committee could look like. We always try to keep all the our local partners and everybody in the loop, but sometimes that's difficult without a real organized a group or a committee to do that. So it's a great model. It sounds like you've got the kinks worked out of it for the most part over the years. So appreciate the opportunity, and we'll probably be talking again soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Did I miss anybody else from Stearns County or any other police department? Okay. Thank you very much for those comments. Does anybody have anything else? If there's nothing else by any member, I will then declare this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you all for participating on our novel venture here, doing this virtually. And the next meeting is set for, I believe it is July 22nd, 2020. It's either going to be just like this virtually, or it's going to be at the Fridley Police Department, depending on the state of the world at that time. So thank you for joining in. I'll declare us adjourned.